Hank Pym had a problem. After years of being one of Earth's mightiest heroes, the founding Avenger was floundering, exiting the team after an identity crisis which left readers unsure just who the character even was anymore. Something drastic needed to be done to refocus, and it seemed like a series of new solo adventures might just do the trick. So how did that work out? Slip on your cybernetic helmet, grab a handful of Pym particles, and saddle your favorite ant because it's time for breakfast.
Breakfast!
Dr. Henry Pym took center stage in Marvel Feature number 4, published in July of 1972, and writer Mike Friedrich and artist Herb Trimpe start things off with a bang. Assigned by the U.S. government to synthesize new drugs from Native American medicines, Pym and lab assistant Peter Parker toil in Dr. Kurt Connor's laboratory, but their work is interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Meet Goldie, a toothy gangster sent to the lab with a message. Connor's son Billy has been kidnapped by the mob. Pym needs to show up at Eagle Neck Point tonight at 10 p.m. with the drugs, or the kid gets it. After alerting Mrs. Connors to the situation, Hank suits up, donning his old Ant-Man costume. However, what appears to be a back-to-the-basics reboot quickly goes off the rails. With helpful hound Orky along for the ride, the heroes head to the meet. However, the gangsters expected Pym, not Parker, and things get hinky. Luckily, Ant-Man is there to even the odds. He launches his attack with an army of ants and young Parker on assist, but the criminals had the advantage in the form of hostage Billy Connors. Pym is forced to surrender when he learns that the villainous Monsieur Tete has injected Billy with a fatal disease, the gangster having the only antidote. Unfortunately for all involved, Billy managed to slip away in all the excitement. As the disease is fatal within 4 hours, the child needs to be recovered immediately, and Pym volunteers for the job. He and Parker are given the same deadly injection to ensure their complicity in the criminal scheme, and then the doc is allowed to leave. Mounting Orky, Pym pursues the boy through the night, eventually discovering him down a shaft at a construction site. Boy, kids fell down a lot of holes before cell phones were invented. Hank attempts to revert to normal, but to his horror, gets stuck at little plastic army man size. What a revolting development. Shrunken or not, Pym remains a hero and quickly uses a rope and the ever-able Orky to pull Billy out of the shaft. But how to get him back to the gangster's hideout? Meanwhile, Parker decides enough is enough and becomes Spider-Man, making short work of the criminals. Only Tete has escaped with the antidotes. Simultaneously, Hank steers while Orky works the gas and brakes of a pickup truck they've commandeered. Man, someone should give the dog his own feature. In an eye-wateringly brutal sequence, Pym uses a nail to take down the fleeing Tete, and the day saved, antidotes are administered all around. However, in spite of being cured of the disease, Pym inexplicably remains trapped in his diminutive size, leading into the next exciting issue. Exposed and alone, a goshawk swoops down on our hero. Powerless, Pym flees for the relative safety of a soda can, but Coke is definitely not it, the hawk clawing at the aluminum receptacle. Thinking quickly, Pym uses the top of his uniform to bind the hawk's beak. With the bird in a panic, the scientist flees, but is stopped by an unexpected obstacle. What would have been an idyllic stream at normal size is like a river to him, but Pym's no quitter. Utilizing a cast-off fishing hook and scrap of line, he crosses the water, but the returning hawk plucks him from the line and carries the scientist high into the air. Desperate, Pym breaks one of the antennae from his helmet and jams the sharpened end into the raptor's talon, forcing the bird to drop him. Luckily, he's still above the stream, and Hank cleaves the water like a first-class diver. He soon finds himself in a junkyard, but before he can elaborate on his metaphorical musings, some commotion catches his attention. It's Pym's old foe, Egghead, and he's pursuing a groovy chick. Hank distracts the villain so that the young woman might make a run for it, but Egghead is determined to catch her. Employing some piano wire, Pym brings the overstuffed scientist down, but Egghead came strapped and starts blasting away at his tiny foe. Before he can finish the job, the chick busts him across his convex cranium with a 2x4. With the villain down, the pair flee, getting to know each other in the process. This is child prodigy Trixie Starr, and her uncle Egghead desperately wants to use her untapped genius in his experiments. And she's handy besides, whipping up Hank a brand spanking new outfit befitting his recent changes. Oh, and the nail? He's keeping it. However, Egghead's also been busy deploying his sentry robots to comb the wilderness. The pair are quickly located with Trixie ensnared in metal capture coils. A vacuum nozzle threatens to suck up Pym with only a spoon to save our hero at the last moment. Unfortunately, flying debris sends him sprawling and the robots capture Trixie. Desperate, the Doc uses a branch to fling himself into one of the robot's intake vents, but Egghead has anticipated this eventuality and gasses Hank with enlarging spray. However, due to the strange chemicals already in the system, Pym remains miniaturized. Using his handy nail, our hero sets off the electrical trap Egghead has devised for him, and the robot explodes. Arriving to investigate, the villain finds no trace of his foe, save his fabled cybernetic helmet, which Egghead keeps for a prize. Seemingly free to move forward with a sinister plan, Egghead straps Trixie into the Hypno-Con and begins the process of extracting her mental energies. Unnoticed, Pym slips into the machine and rewires it, with the device unexpectedly short-circuiting before Trish's brain can be drained. Egghead's scheme shattered before his eyes, the villain breaks down, but there's no time to gloat, Pym and Trixie escaping the compound moments before it explodes. With Egghead presumed dead, Trixie helps Hank catch a greyhound back home, but once inside the house, our hero makes a startling discovery, his wife Janet unconscious on the floor. Issue 6 picks up with deadly shards of glass falling from the shattered skylight above. Acting quickly, Pym leaps and activates an umbrella catch, causing it to spring open, deflecting the razor-sharp glass. However, Hank winds up down a heating vent, no place for a self-respecting scientist to be. It's then Jan's chauffeur bursts into the room and has an oddly personal exchange with his employer. Hank, desperate to get his wife's attention, launches his helmet into the living room, catching the sharp-eyed Jan's eye. Ah, Jan. Tender, sparkle-mouthed Jan. Hank, you're a regular Rod McEwen. After swapping some spit, the Pyms get to work attempting to isolate the unknown factor in Hank's bloodstream, preventing him from reverting to his normal height. However, his overly cautious approach bothers the more emotional Wasp. But before things can get contentious, a sudden wind sends the Pyms sprawling. Its chauffeur Charles returned in his criminal guise of the Whirlwind, and he's here to bag Jan. Not willing to lose his wife again so soon, Hank snaps off the lights and, using compressed gas from a nearby line, fires a ball bearing, shattering his foe's flashlight. As he's a bit of a thicko, Whirlwind lights a match to see, sparking this explosive reaction. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Pyms hide within a computer console until the Whirlwind departs. With time now of the essence, Jan urges Hank to use the antidote, but Pym still isn't 100% on it, so the ever-impulsive Wasp quaffs a handful to force the issue. The serum has an unexpected reaction on her unique biochemistry, first causing her to enlarge before leaving her trapped at bug size. It's then the Whirlwind appears, this time with a state-of-the-art deoxygenator stolen from Avengers headquarters itself. He sprays the room with the device, but Wasp is immune to the effects thanks to Hank's Ant-Man helmet. Angered, Whirlwind sets the lab on fire and departs again, leaving our heroes trapped. Using the tools at hand, Pym devises a nutty means of escape, using a stream of water to carry the pair out of the burning lab. Unfortunately, the stream trickles to a stop, forcing a quick rethink. Luckily, a nearby helium tank and a handy balloon provide salvation for the tiny Avengers, carrying them up and out of the inferno. Exhausted, the pair collapse on their front lawn, only waking up the next morning to discover this horrifying headline. With issue 7, artist Herb Trimpe takes leave of the book, passing the penciling chores off to a pre-P Craig Russell. Our story begins with the now homeless Pyms attempting to navigate the wilds of their neighbor's backyard. The pair are stalked and eventually caught by butterfly net-wielding weirdo Boswell, who mistakes them for colorful bugs due to his impaired sight and mental faculties, if we're going to be honest. After gassing the Pyms, he spirits them back to his lab. Gifts for Paraman, a scaly android of his own design. Turns out this Timu Ultron wishes to study insects to gain their immense powers of stinging and, ruining picnics? It's pretty half-baked, really. This thing is already a fairly sophisticated artificial life form in the Marvel Universe. Surely you can find a shield helicarrier to hijack or at least a lead pipe to hit people with. Later, Paraman demands to rewatch movies of its own creation and evolution, glorying in its superiority over its creator. It's the early 1970s, see, and even robots are deep and have feelings. I mean, where does a Paraman fit into this nutty mixed-up universe of ours, anyway? Really makes you think. An oxygen-starved Pym, meanwhile, employs his ever-handy nail to escape his jar, and then sets Jan free. Hank warns her to be quiet, as even the buzzing of her wings might wake Boswell. Wait, you just shattered 2 glass bottles a foot away from this guy's head. I'd say he's a pretty deep sleeper. Unfortunately, Paraman has returned from his midnight musings, blocking the doorway. Jan attempts to distract the android that Hank might escape, but Pym has other plans. Using his nail, he punctures a fuel can, spilling gas all over the laboratory floor. The size-challenged scientist then manages to spark a handy match, and, tossing the torch overhead, sets the stream of volatile liquid ablaze. Paraman quickly moves to extinguish the flames, but the fuel can explodes, and the entire lab goes up. Boswell attempts to put out the blaze, but he's even less of a fireman than a scientist, and the whole place quickly collapses to the ground. In the end, all that's left is Paraman's head. Not much, but enough that the mismatched pair might start all over again. Only there's no time to worry about those two, as Jan has mutated into a killer wasp. Issue 8 consists mostly of reprints, so we'll skip it. As Marvel Feature was already bi-monthly, this delay effectively killed whatever momentum the story might have had. Readers had to wait until July of 1973 for issue 9, and that was simply too long. As our tale begins, it's looking grim for the Pyms, as Hank prepares to spear his attacking spouse. Only Jan hesitates, some aspect of her former self fighting for control. Taking advantage of her momentary confusion, Hank heads for Z Hills, but discovers he isn't alone, stumbling upon this big honkin' rat. He faces off with the vermin, but before it can pounce, the rat is stunned from behind. The wasp has found Hank, and she's of 2 minds on the subject. The mutation demands she kill, but the wife in her resists. See, kids, marriage is more complicated than it seems. Salvation glints in the distance, Hank's Ant-Man helmet discarded in the grass. Boy, that thing really gets around. And someone repaired the broken antenna, too. How thoughtful. Pym reasons the helmet's cybernetics might allow him to reach Jan. He swings for it, but Jan stings him from behind. Frantically wishing he'd brought his can of DEET, Pym slips on the helmet and calls forth an army of ants to assist. The wasp viciously attacks, making short work of Pym's troops. It's not ants she's looking to kill, it's old Hank himself, driving him back to the edge of this steep precipice. Pym thinks harder than he's ever thunked before, and what do you know, the cybernetic signals finally get through to Jan, who returns to human form. Oh, Hank, what has led us here? What cruel, uncaring fate? Pym snaps. She's got to stay calm, see? Or anxiety will cause her to return to wasp form. Yeah, I think a little marriage counseling and a long vacation might be in order after this. As if fate hasn't already been unkind enough, the pair next face An angry kitten. You know, I'm starting to think writer Mike Friedrich isn't taking this assignment all that seriously. Angered by the kitten, the wasp reverts to her more savage, insectile form, although she's lost the extra limbs. I wonder if there was some plan for her to retain this weird power, with it popping up at a later date to complicate things, but I guess we'll never know. The kitten knocks her out and is set to pounce, but Pym is at the ready. He slashes the poor thing across the face with his nail, driving the frightened feline back long enough for some angry ants to arrive and assist. He rushes to Jan's side and scoops her up, but quickly discovers he's not alone. Our story concludes in the pages of Marvel Feature number 10, and probably just in the nick of time. If this story was meant to reinvent Pym as a saleable commodity, it fails on pretty much every level, going from sci-fi B-movie homage to something far sillier, more akin to the camp superhero titles produced by MLJ or even Pym's own uneven run in Tales to Astonish years earlier. I mean, the villain calls himself Dr. Nemesis. It's not even funny, it just kinda hurts. Nemesis immediately returns, Hank's size-changing abilities nullifying what I thought was the whole point of this relaunch. Pym isn't just a power set in a goofy costume. He's a scientist above all else, and stripping him of the superheroic persona allows us to see what the character might truly be capable of. He's at his best solving problems and using his intellect. A thinker, not a brawler, and the story initially takes great pains to show this. Then, as if some editorial mandate abruptly dropped across the bow, it's all undone, with Hank growing and shrinking again, as if nothing ever happened. The guy just had a highly aggressive form of rabies, suffered contusions, mutated wasp stings, smoke inhalation, not to mention enough mental stress to crack a dozen lesser men, but now, because the story didn't work, it's all out the window. I get it, the relaunch failed, but to suddenly dial it all back just feels lazy and wasteful. We go out with a whimper, the Pyms defeating Nemesis before returning back to the comfortable old status quo. What a ride, though. I laughed. I cried. I couldn't understand it if I tried. Thanks for joining us on this speed run through Marvel Feature. If you enjoyed it, please share with your favorite aphid, ant, or inchworm. After all, comics are better with friends. I'm Jason Mink, and I'll see you next time at breakfast.
Three.